I know people feel the type of way about this poster here, bro. They got Raven Johnson on there. Raven Johnson is slowly but surely winning over a lot of these Indiana Fever fans. A lot of people thought that it could not happen. They hated each other. She hated Indiana fans, but whatever the case may be, I told y'all what it was. I wasn't 100% convinced that she was going to come in and be as hands-on as she is with Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. I thought she would be a little bit more reserved after that first interaction.
Look at that poster. Raven Johnson front and center with Caitlin Clark for the Fever's preseason game against Dallas. And if you know the history between these two fan bases, you understand why this image is causing such a reaction. This is the same player who refused to give Clark a high five in their first interaction. The same player whose college fan base went to war with Clark's supporters for years, and now she's being marketed as part of the Fever's core alongside the league's biggest star. So the question everyone's asking, is this genuine chemistry building, or is this just smart marketing from a franchise that knows exactly what drives engagement? Because tonight's matchup against Dallas isn't just another preseason game. It's Caitlin Clark versus Paige Bupinkers. It's the Fever's revamped defense against one of the most dynamic backcourts in the league. And it's a test of whether Stephanie White's system can handle the kind of offensive versatility that Jose Fernandez is about to throw at them.
Whatever the case may be, I'm always about love. So if we all could come together and love the game of women's basketball, how we all know we could do, and agree that now Raven Johnson is a Fever. Now she has become an asset, at least in the first debut that we was able to see. I'm interested to see how Raven Johnson is going to play out in this game, being her second time at bat. I want to see if she's still going to have the same defensive aggression that she had, because Jose Fernandez, which we're going to.
Now that's interesting. He's not hiding his strategy at all. Jose Fernandez just told us exactly how he plans to attack Indiana's defense. Put Paige Buckers on the ball, take her off the ball, create different looks with AZ Fudd, and force the Fever to adjust on the fly. That's not the kind of thing you usually hear from a head coach before a game, even in preseason. But here's what makes this significant for tonight. The Fever showed some seriously questionable defensive rotations in their first preseason game. And I'm not talking about minor miscommunications. There were possessions where players were so out of position that you had to wonder what the defensive scheme even was. Stephanie White is known as a defensive-minded coach, but what we saw on the floor didn't reflect that reputation. So when Fernandez talks about testing different lineups and playing Paige in multiple roles, he's specifically targeting what looked like Indiana's biggest weakness.
Let's listen to him.
And how we're preparing. I truly believe we hired the right people, and we have the right people in the building and the right people communicating and coaching our team.
Hey, Coach, with preseason coming up this week, what are some of the things that you're looking to assess with this roster?
Well, making sure we play with great pace, right? Which we've been practicing that way. Our spacing, how we're defending, and the carryover on what we've really stressed in practice, carrying it over to the game. Now,
And there it is, the depth conversation. Because while everyone's focused on the Paige Azzi Satu trio, Fernandez just rattled off 5 other names that can hurt you. Odyssey Sims, who was with the Fever just months ago and averaged 16 points in their playoff push. Maddie Siegrist, who can stretch the floor. Alicia Clark, a veteran who's been to multiple finals. That's not just depth, that's legitimate rotation players who could start for other teams. Compare that to what Indiana's working with tonight. Lexi Hall's on the injury report. Aaliyah Boston's on the injury report. The 2 players who are supposed to provide defensive versatility and interior presence aren't even guaranteed to play. So the Fever are potentially going into this game without 2 of their most important defensive pieces, against a Dallas team that just added multiple scoring threats and has a coach who's already game planning specific actions to exploit defensive weaknesses. That's not ideal. And it raises a legitimate question about Indiana's approach to preseason. Yes, you want to be cautious with your stars, but chemistry matters. Defensive rotations need reps. You can't just flip a switch when the regular season starts on May 9th and expect everything to click.
Without the ball in our hands, playing different lineups. So those are the kind of things that I want to do on Thursday, and then also in Austin against Vegas.
How's it going, Coach Ron Murray?
Hey, Ron.
So, of course, with this season, we have a core of AZ, Paige, and Enrique. So, of course, this season,
yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So, with that, if everything goes the way you want it, how good do you think that trio could be on the for if everything goes as you wanted to go in your first year?
Yeah, that's a talented trio, without a doubt. But I like that we have the depth that we have on this team, right? You haven't mentioned Isaiah James. You haven't mentioned Maddie Segrist. You haven't even talked about Odyssey Sims, right? We've had some folks that were.
Listen to how he talks about Elisha Clark, not just as a player, but as a resource for him personally, as a first-year WNBA head coach. That's significant, because Fernandez has been a head coach for 25 years at the college level, but this is his first season in the W. And he's openly saying he goes to Clark for honest feedback about how things are going, what's working, what needs adjustment. That kind of veteran leadership is exactly what Dallas needed after the turmoil of recent seasons. They've had coaching changes, roster overhauls, and inconsistent results despite having talented players. Now they've got a coach who's humble enough to lean on his veterans' experience, and they've got the personnel to actually execute a coherent system. Meanwhile, Indiana's veteran presence is Kelsey Mitchell and Erica Wheeler, both excellent players, but neither has been to a finals, neither has that championship pedigree that Clark brings to Dallas. And when you're trying to build a contender around a generational talent like Caitlin Clark, that experience gap matters. Especially in close games, especially in playoff situations, especially when things aren't going according to plan.
Today is game day for the Indiana Fever, man. They will be hosting the Dallas Wings for their second preseason game. Follow it up with another game this upcoming weekend. Now, I'm here to tell you, I'm excited about this one, man. This is Paige Beckers. You know, we get to see her and Caitlin Clark face off again. And we get to see AZ Fudd with Paige Beckers facing Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. Now, something that really stood out to me this game was the injury report. I really want to see Lexi Hall, and I damn sure want to see Aaliyah Boston. I'm going to be for certain sticking to this narrative that they really need those reps and basically getting game time.
Game day energy. Second preseason matchup. And you can hear the excitement in his voice about this specific game. Paige versus Caitlin, the matchup that college basketball fans have been waiting for. Except now it's happening in the WNBA, with professional spacing, professional physicality, and professional defensive schemes. Here's what makes tonight's game more important than a typical preseason contest. The Fever are trying to establish an identity under Stephanie White. They've talked about playing faster, defending harder, and getting Caitlin more easy looks in transition. But talking about it and executing it against a well-coached team with multiple weapons are two different things. Dallas isn't going to just let Indiana run. They're going to make the Fever execute in the half court. They're going to switch ball screens, and they're going to force role players to make plays. And that's where the injury report becomes crucial. If Aaliyah Boston doesn't play, who's setting those screens for Caitlin? Who's rolling to the rim and forcing help defense? If Lexi Hull doesn't play, who's spacing the floor and making defenses pay for loading up on Clark? These aren't just preseason questions. These are fundamental roster construction questions that need answers before May 9th.
Last night, we reacted to the Blake Shelton situation. Today, they is letting the fans know that it is game day. Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. I would love to see these two take off for the 2023-26 season, but it is what it is, man. But it's good to see them still enjoying their time together.
And there's the social media reaction. The Fever posted about the Blake Shelton situation. They're hyping up game day, and they're showing Caitlin and Aaliyah together, despite the injury report. That's deliberate messaging. They want fans to know the relationship is strong, the vibes are good, and this team is building something special. But social media narratives and on-court results don't always align. You can post all the positive content you want, but if the defensive rotations are still confused, if the offensive spacing is still cramped, if the chemistry isn't translating to winning basketball, then none of that matters. Fans will see through it immediately. What's interesting about tonight specifically is that it's scheduled for 7 p.m. Eastern on ION. That's prime time. That's national exposure. That's the league putting this matchup in a spotlight and saying this is must-watch basketball. So the pressure's on both teams to show they're ready for the regular season, even if key players are limited or sitting out entirely.
Let everybody know, hey, I think what y'all was saying. Y'all said I struggled from three. Now, granted, she only played, I believe, 17 to 18 minutes. She only had 7 points. But I think if she start off quick, fast, just like how she did last game. I think last game, Caitlin Clark might have had 7 points within the first 5 minutes. I mean, like, it was quick, fast. Then she kind of slowed down, which I get it, you know. But it's going to be very interesting to see. Now, what we're going to be watching next is Jose Fernandez, the head coach of the Dallas Wings, speak about.
Now this is the part that should concern Fever fans. He's talking about Caitlin's shooting struggles from three-point range in the first preseason game. 7 points in 17-18 minutes. That's not the stat line you expect from someone who's supposed to be the focal point of your entire offense. But here's the context that matters. Caitlin started that first game fast, scored 7 points quickly, then slowed down as the game progressed. That's not a conditioning issue. That's a scheme issue. Once defenses adjusted and started playing her tighter, the Fever didn't have counters. They didn't have actions designed to get her open looks. They didn't have the off-ball movement to create confusion and free her up. Against Dallas tonight, that's going to be even more pronounced. Jose Fernandez isn't going to let Caitlin get comfortable. He's going to throw different defenders at her, he's going to switch everything, and he's going to dare Indiana's role players to beat him. So if the Fever come out with the same stagnant half-court offense they showed in Game 1, this could get ugly fast. And the expectation is that Caitlin will respond. She always elevates against Paige. That rivalry brings out the best in both of them. But expecting one player to overcome systemic offensive issues isn't a sustainable strategy. At some point, Stephanie White needs to show she can design an offense that functions even when the defense takes away Caitlin's first option.
Sell some more tickets. This makes it, right?
Yes.
Hey, Coach, Sydney Rockwood with Yahoo Sports. How has it been having a vet like Alicia Clark in the locker room? I know you touched on it a little bit.
She's been incredible. We spoke on the phone in free agency, and we had an incredible conversation that night. Then the next day, walked in and talked to front office and said, you know what?
All right, let's talk about what tonight's game actually reveals about both franchises heading into the 2025 season. Because this isn't just about who wins a preseason game in October. This is about organizational philosophy, roster construction, and whether these teams are building sustainable contenders or just hoping star power carries them. Start with Dallas. They sold out season tickets for the third consecutive year. They need a bigger building because demand is outpacing supply. That's not happening by accident. That's the result of smart front office decisions, bringing in a proven college coach who knows how to develop talent and surrounding their stars with legitimate depth. When Fernandez lists off Odyssey Sims, Maddie Siegrist, and Alicia Clark as role players, that's a luxury most teams don't have. Those are players who could start elsewhere. And look at how Fernandez is approaching his first WNBA season. He's not coming in acting like he knows everything, because he won at the college level. He's leaning on veterans like Alicia Clark for guidance. He's being transparent about his game plan because he's confident in his system. He's testing different lineup combinations in preseason specifically to see what works before games matter. That's the kind of coaching that builds trust with players and creates sustainable success. Now contrast that with Indiana's situation. They've got the biggest star in women's basketball. They've got a talented young core. They've got a coach in Stephanie White who should theoretically be the perfect fit. But the injury management approach is raising questions. Why are Lexi Hull and Aaliyah Boston on the injury report for a preseason game when both are crucial to the team's defensive identity? Is this legitimate caution, or is this a sign that the medical staff is being overly conservative after last season's injury issues? Because here's the thing about chemistry in basketball. You can't fake it. You can't just assume it'll be there when the games start counting. You need reps. You need to see how defenders rotate when Aaliyah sets a screen for Caitlin. You need to know where Lexi's going to be when the defense collapses. You need those instinctive reads that only come from playing together in game situations. And the defensive concerns from Game 1 aren't minor issues. There were possessions where Indiana's rotations were so confused that it looked like they'd never practiced together. Players were late on closeouts, help defense was non-existent, and the communication was clearly not where it needs to be. Against a mediocre offensive team, you can survive those mistakes. Against Dallas, with Paige running the show and multiple shooters spacing the floor, those breakdowns turn into blowouts. Think about what Jose Fernandez said about his offensive approach. He's going to put Paige on the ball, then take her off the ball. He's going to create different looks with Ozzy. He's going to make the Fever's defense think and adjust on every possession. That requires defensive discipline, communication, and trust. If Indiana doesn't have those things figured out by now, they're going to get exposed tonight. And let's address the Raven Johnson situation, because it's actually more significant than people realize. The fact that she's on the promotional poster with Caitlin isn't just marketing. That's the Fever making a statement about their roster construction. They're saying, we believe this pairing can work, and we're building our identity around it. But belief doesn't equal results. Raven needs to prove she can defend at an elite level without fouling. She needs to show she can run the offense when Caitlin's off the floor. She needs to demonstrate that her college rivalry with Caitlin is genuinely in the past. Because if that relationship is still awkward, if there's still tension between their fan bases, if Ravens' presence creates more problems than it solves, then Indiana just wasted a roster spot on someone who doesn't fit. And in a league where roster spots are precious and every player needs to contribute, that's a mistake you can't afford. The broader question tonight is about expectations. Fever fans are expecting a playoff team. They're expecting Caitlin to elevate this franchise to contender status immediately. But building a winner takes more than one star. It takes depth, it takes coaching, it takes defensive identity, and it takes time for all those pieces to mesh. Dallas has been building that foundation for multiple years. Indiana's trying to accelerate the process. So when this game tips off at 7 p.m. Eastern, pay attention to the details. Watch how Indiana's defense handles ball screens. Watch whether they have counters when Dallas switches everything. Watch how Caitlin responds when she doesn't have easy looks. Watch whether the Fever's role players can make plays when the defense loads up on their star. Those details will tell you way more about this team's ceiling than the final score. And if you're a Fever fan hoping this team contends for a championship in 2025, tonight's performance needs to show significant improvement from Game 1, because right now, Dallas looks like the more complete team. They've got the depth, they've got the coaching, and they've got the organizational stability that Indiana's still trying to establish. Caitlin Clark is the best player on the floor tonight, but basketball's a team game, and the better team usually wins, regardless of who has the biggest star. So drop your predictions in the comments. Does Caitlin go off for 25 plus and prove the doubters wrong? Does Dallas's depth overwhelm Indiana's limited rotation? Does Stephanie White show she's got answers for Fernandez's offensive versatility? Because this game matters way more than a typical October preseason matchup. This is a statement game for both franchises about where they're headed in 2025. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the post-game breakdown, because we're going to dive deep into what tonight's performance actually means for both teams moving forward.